Hello and welcome to Backyard Food Guide. What I'd like to do today is to talk about the scallopini or the pattypan squash. This squash has a nice buttery flavor and is often a really good alternative to zucchini if you're tired of having too much zucchini in the garden. It looks very pretty, it has a scalloped edge, and I think one huge advantage to the squash is that you can harvest it in as little as 55 days. That's because you want to take it pretty small, so approximately 2 to 4 inches in diameter is when you want to pick this particular fruit. It is a very nice soft flavor, and if you pick it young, like all squashes, if you allow the fruit to grow too big, then what happens is that the rind will be really hard. So if you pick the scallopini at 2 to 4 inches, then you don't have to peel the rind. You can cook it as you would a zucchini. To start from seed, you can soak the seeds or use the paper towel method to get them started with the sprouting. You'd want to make sure that the temperature is at least 7 degrees Fahrenheit or approximately 20 degrees Celsius. This is a summer plant and they do like it relatively warm. You'll want to plant your seedlings approximately 2 feet apart and then in rows that are about 2 feet apart. They can grow fairly big, so you do want to make sure that you give them some room to grow. And with summer squash, you don't really have to stagger plant them as much because they tend to produce after the 55 days throughout. Summer squash will do well in most types of soils as long as it drains well, so it is relatively flexible. Once it starts to flower, you want to make sure to water it quite well, especially once the fruit is starting to develop. And with our seedlings, what I like to do is mulch because the roots are relatively shallow, and in the summer, in hot weather, the roots can dry out relatively quickly. With the scallopini, it's also a good idea to side dress the soil with some compost, so dig in a little bit of compost once every couple of weeks. Some good companion plants for the pattypan squash would include beans, corn, cucumbers, radishes, melon, mint, onions, and even pumpkins. What I've read is that it's a good idea to keep squashes away from potatoes. In terms of pests, it's a good idea to companion plant with herbs like oregano, which can keep away a number of the pests that like squashes. Dill can also repel the squash bug, and marigolds and nasturtiums are great at deterring all kinds of different pests. What I have next are 2 great recipes for pattypan squash. The first one is a roasted pattypan squash, and this recipe comes from spendwithpennies.com. The first thing that you want to do is to heat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit and cut 1.5 pounds of pattypan squash into bite-sized pieces. Then what you want to do is toss with a tablespoon of olive oil and a clove of minced garlic, season with some salt and pepper. Put the squash onto parchment paper and roast for about 12 to 15 minutes until just tender crisp. You can broil for a minute if you like and to add a little bit of browning to the squash. While the squash is roasting, you can chop some herbs to create an herb oil. Whisk a mixture of herbs with olive oil and half teaspoon of lemon zest. Parsley, basil, and dill work well, but of course you can just try some of your favorite herbs for this great pattypan squash recipe. The next recipe that we have is a pattypan squash panzanella, which is essentially a bread and cheese salad. This beautiful recipe is courtesy of loveandlemons.com. You start with 5 to 6 small Pattypan squash and you cut them into bite-sized pieces. Pan fry them in olive oil with salt and pepper. In the meantime, you can slice 1½ cups of cherry tomatoes in half and 1 small cucumber into 1/2-inch pieces. Place the cherry tomatoes and cucumbers in a large bowl and toss with a drizzle of olive oil, 1/2 clove of minced garlic, and a drizzle of sherry vinegar. For this mixture, you can also now add a few pinches of salt and pepper. Then after that, what you want to do is to combine the rest of the ingredients. So you want 1/2 cup of mini mozzarella balls cut in half, cubed 4 to 5 slices of stale sourdough bread, or French bread will do as well. You can also add 1/2 cup of toasted pine nuts, a handful of fresh basil leaves, and then of course the pan-fried squash as well. At this point, take a look at the salad. You could add a little more olive oil, sherry vinegar, and salt and pepper as needed. Make sure you let the panzanella sit at room temperature for about 15 minutes so that the bread can soak up the flavors. Okay, that's all the information we have on the Pattypan squash. I hope you found it to be useful, and if you did, please like and subscribe. See you next time.